Hi everybody, very welcome to Mentour and yet another video podcast. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Today on the video, we are going to be talking about the new LEAP engines that are fitted to the 737 MAX, and specifically about the jagged back edges of the LEAP engines. Now, are they there just to look good, or do they actually have a purpose? Stay tuned. This video is brought to you in cooperation with Cambly. Now, if you want to improve on your English skills and you want to do so in a little bit more private setting, then I would recommend you to use the links below. You can set up, you have 15 minutes for free that you can use to find a tutor of your choice, and you can set up a plan together with him or her. So check it out. Right guys, if you're like me, you've seen the new LEAP engines that are being fitted to the 737 MAX, and also the way that they look is similar to the engines fitted to the Boeing 787 Dreamliner and to the new 747 as well. Now, the main thing that you see when you look at these engines are, and at least that's what I think, that look really futuristic and modern, and that has to do with that jagged back edge of the engine exhausts. So those jagged back edges is called chevrons. And do they actually have a purpose on top of just making it look great? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. And in order to understand the problem that these chevrons are trying to solve, we have to go back to the beginning of the jet age. So a jet engine essentially is a reaction engine. It means that it uses the principle that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So a jet engine works kind of like you know how when you blow up a balloon and you let the balloon go, the balloon just flies away? All right, a jet engine works exactly like that. But instead of having a balloon that is full of air that it propulses out, it actually increases the amount of air all the time from the front. So it sucks in air. It adds air into a combustion chamber where fuel is added, and then that's ignited. And when you ignite that, it becomes a controlled explosion that increases the volume of the air because of the temperature increase, and that is being directed out towards the back, and that forms the thrust going forward. All right, so that's the basic principle, and the really early jet engine only used that in order to produce thrust. But in order to lift a really big, heavy aircraft using only that way of producing thrust meant that you had to expose a lot of hot air at very high speed at the back of the engines. Okay, what happens when you have two different air masses of different speed rubbing up against each other is that turbulence is being created, vortexes are being created, and those vortexes actually makes noise. Any one of you guys who have been flight spotters, if you've been standing at the runway edge when an aircraft comes in and land and you hear the wing vortexes come down, you can hear that noise. But this is in a much, much larger quantity, and obviously the difference in speed between the engine exhaust and the surrounding air is huge. That's why there's so much noise. So, in the beginning of the jet age, this wasn't really a problem because A, there weren't too many of these jet aircraft around, and B, there's not too many people that cared too much about it because it came with an increase in performance and thrust and the ability to fly further with bigger aircraft. So people didn't really care about it. But As there became more and more of these jet aircraft around, and as the population grew, especially around the airport, people started complaining about jet noise. So this started to become a priority for engine manufacturers, airlines, and so on. The single biggest improvement to the jet engine noise came when the high bypass ratio engines were introduced. So the modern engines that you see on today's aircraft, the single biggest feature that you will notice is that huge fan in the front of the engine. What this is doing is basically using some of the energy being created by the jet exhaust. It's converting that into kinetic energy in the form of a big fan. That fan is turning and it is pushing, taking a bigger volume of air, pushing it back, but at a lower speed than the jet exhaust. Okay? So you have a bypass exhaust and a jet exhaust. And because the speed of the bypass, the huge bypass air amount is being pushed out at a lower speed, it also means that those vortexes that are being created are less intense, hence much less noise. And also this kind of capsulates the jet exhaust. So the slower but still fairly fast bypass air is encapsulating the jet exhaust, and it's actually taking away some of the noise from that as well, because it's reducing the amount of vortexes. All right, so this reduced the amount of noise from the jet engines with 30 to 50%, which is a huge deal. All right, but it is not enough. Okay, the noise footprints of aircraft today is being very closely monitored. When I fly into, especially in the UK, for example, there are noise monitoring stations scattered out all around the countryside in the arrival path and departure path of aircraft, and they are monitoring every single movement. Okay, so most of the airports that we fly into have mandatory constant descend approaches, which means that the aircraft cannot or should not level off. And that's to avoid the thrust coming up, because every time the thrust comes up on a jet engine, more noise is being created. So we have that, and we also have quite complicated noise abatement procedure routes from some of the airports that we fly to. So jet engine is still a problem, and the engine manufacturers are now having to go into much more advanced solution to this problem. And this is where the chevrons come in. So they're not just there to look good, even if they do. What they do is that they further reduce the noise of the engine by controlling the vortexes that are being created from both the jet exhaust, but also from the bypass air. The way that they are formed, NASA has made research, a lot of research around this, and they found out that the way that these chevrons are being formed, they create vortexes themselves, but very small and very controlled vortexes that encapsulates the relatively high speed bypass air that's coming out. So on the older engines that didn't have the chevrons, the bypass air was rubbing up against the surrounding air and creating uncontrolled vortexes that were smaller than the earlier engines, but still quite noisy. With these chevrons, you now have a little boundary layer with more controlled vortexes that encapsulates that air as well, and it can reduce the noise of an engine at takeoff thrust with up to 6 decibels. Now that doesn't sound like much, but it can make a huge difference from an engine on takeoff thrust, and especially when it comes to noise regulations, so it's a big deal. Now, they do look very aerodynamic. Are they actually more aerodynamic? The answer to that question is no. In fact, they are less aerodynamic than the old engines. They actually take away some of the thrust of the engine. Anyone who's been watching some of my earlier videos, specifically the one about winglets, knows that anytime a vortex is being created, it takes away energy from the objects that's creating the vortex. So that's the fact here. Since you're adding these chevrons and they are creating vortexes, they're actually reducing the amount of thrust that the engine can take out with about, there's different figures on this, but about 0.5% of the thrust. But as always, everything that happens also has other repercussions. So the fact that the engines are now quieter means that the aircraft manufacturers can remove some of the sound insulation that has to be installed in aircraft. the sound insulation is traditionally quite heavy. So the fact that they can reduce some of that means that they can reduce the overall weight of the aircraft, and that fact actually makes these engines more fuel efficient, because the net effect of the lighter aircraft is higher than the effect of the loss of thrust that these chevrons create. So as you can see, this is now becoming fairly advanced, you know, and you can expect more of these kind of tiny little tinkerings with aircraft technology in order to gain 0.5% here, 0.25% there going forward. This is why there's these little winglets are popping up. This is why these chevrons are popping up, and I'm sure that we're going to see more of that going forward as well. Now, guys, I want to finish off with making sure that you check out this link to the sponsor of this video, Cambly. Now, I cannot stress how important it is that you guys have good English knowledge. If you want to get into this business, your English skills are paramount. So if you feel that they're lacking a little bit, feel that you need to improve them a little bit, I highly recommend you to check out Cambly. And as I said, you can check it out for 15 minutes. Find a tutor of your choice that can set up a course specifically for you and your needs, and use it, because I think it's probably one of the more economical ways of improving your English skills that are available on the internet today. Also, before you go, I know that you know that I'm about to finish the video, but I really want you to check out my new website, mentorpilot.com. All right? I am creating this website as a tool for you guys to be able to interact, both me with you, but also you guys with each other. I am creating a news feed, so if you need a place to go to find out news about the aviation world, then check out mentorpilot.com and make sure that you kind of highlight it and make it up into a bookmark in your home screen. There's a chat in there that you guys can interact with. You will see blog posts from me, and probably I will be starting to recommend different flight schools that I am working together with as well. So check out mentorpilot.com. Have an absolutely fantastic day wherever you are, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.